Hi guys, welcome to Mark Anthony's Music Picks. Today we're on episode 40, and I'm going to be reviewing an artist that was suggested by one of my listeners. His name is Steve. Steve, thank you for the suggestion. Today we're going to be talking about Mathew Jonson, and we're going to go through some of the biggest hits in his catalog. Now, if you guys have watched all my old episodes, you'll know that I've talked about Mathew Jonson in a few of them, and I've specifically mentioned Marionette, my favorite Mathew Jonson track of all time, twice now, in episode 5 and most recently in episode 36, where I did the Sven Väth Sounds of the Sixth Season review. Today, I'm going to be excluding Marionette from my episode, so this is going to be Mathew Jonson's top hits that aren't Marionette. And I'm going to go through his catalog. I'm going to start with some of the older ones and then come up to the newer ones as I get to the end of the list. And this will be a good starter list for people that may have heard of Mathew Jonson, have one or two of his records, and want to go a little bit deeper into that catalog. A little bit of history about Mathew Jonson. He's very much a musician. He's not as much of a DJ. When he plays live, he plays a live set, so he's concocting sounds or playing loops and samples that he has generated in the past, and he uses them to formulate a set of his own music, but he doesn't play other people's music. He's very much influenced by jazz, and I put him in a very similar category as Minologue, if you guys are familiar with Minologue. They're very heavy on the synths and the gear and the filters and the effects, and I'm going to give you guys a link down below to two interviews. One is the Mathew Jonson interview where it shows his studio, and if you just get a look at some of the gear that he has, it'll blow your mind. I mean, he's got everything wired into everything else, and it's this entire immersive setup where he's creating all this sound. There's another interview where he talks about his record label. He's involved with two record labels, as far as I know at this point. The first one is Wagon Repair, which I believe kicked off in 2004, and that's been Mathew's kind of bread and butter label. And I believe it's still active. They're still sometimes re-releasing some of their older records, but if you listen to the second interview that I'm going to give you a link to, he describes some of the pain that he went through with the label when digital became very popular. He lost traction, he wasn't able to pay his employees, it got down to just one person, and then it got down to releasing the quality, degrading the quality of the releases, maybe by not having perfect mastering or not having perfect cover art like he used to have. So it's kind of telling a little bit of a sad story about, the eventual gradual decline of Wagon Repair. Mathew Jonson released very often on the label called It Is What It Is. You can see it's written across the top there. He released on that label initially. That's where his music started out in 2001. But he didn't run the label. It was run by another guy who I'm not familiar with. I think his name was Spencer. And then at some point, Mathew bought out the label and started doing represses because there was still a lot of demand for the music on that label, which is very high quality. So let's get into the releases here. The first one I'm going to talk about, this is 2001. This is Mathew Jonson's New Identity release. I love the little color scheme here. I like how this looks. And one thing I'll say about the It Is What It Is releases is they're really thick, high quality plates. Like they're just perfect. This is a really nice copy that I got. And I like all three tracks on here, but the one I went for is the actual track called New Identity, which takes up, it looks like this is the A side it takes up. It's just it's like borderline DJ tool. You can hear Mathew's subtle melodies sort of hanging out in the background of the track, but first and foremost, it's almost like a tech house or a minimal tech house type vibe here. like I said, could be used in a DJ set, very functional record, and I think this would be early in your set. The first half of the set would be when you would drop this. But I would say if you can get this for 25 or 30 bucks, I would say this is worth it. Really nice all-around release. Next one I want to show you guys is probably his most popular or well-known track, and that is Tightrope. This is the Tightrope EP. There's another track on the B-side called Magic Through Music. I almost said it backwards. Tightrope is probably the better of the two. It has like a really nice 8-beat melody that kind of just trickles and cascades. And I would say that this, out of anything in his catalog, really typifies like the straight down the middle Mathew Jonson sound. And I'm not saying that he sounds like other producers. He really doesn't. Nobody sounds like him unless they're trying to imitate him. But this is probably his most, like I said, straight down the middle, vanilla Mathew Jonson record. And I also think that it's very high quality and something that you would really want to have in your collection for a long time. This isn't one that you would buy and then sell off a few years later because you got bored with it. The next one I'm going to talk about is his Followed by Angels EP. And this is probably his most lush effort. It's very happy and uplifting, probably his happiest track. Mathew tends to go a little bit darker with like gritty sounds and gritty bass lines. Here he went totally soft. There was a Discogs reviewer that said that it sounded like plastic or warm plastic or something along those lines, and I always remembered that review because it does sound like melted plastic, if that makes any sense. It just has like a very soft, everything's kind of round. If you could visualize the track, it just feels like everything is round and flexible and gooey. It's a really, really nice track. And like I said, it is what it is. Always thick plates and just really, really nice cuts on the pressing. Just absolutely love this label. You just know that it's gonna sound good and you're gonna get that nice heavy vinyl that sits nice and flat on there and on your turntable and just brings quality music to you. The fourth release I want to talk about is Love Letter to the Enemy. I slept on this for a while. I think I went through his catalog when I first discovered Marionette back in the day, but I rediscovered it through Josh Wink's mix, Profound Sounds Volume 3. For any techno connoisseurs out there, I'm just going to go on a little side note here. If you want to listen to probably the best thing that Josh Wink ever produced in terms of a DJ mix, Profound Sounds Volume 3 was totally crazy. It's a lesson in abstract techno and darkness, and the way that he mixed that all together was beautiful. And I believe this track featured towards the end of Disc 2. It was either the end of Disc 1 or Disc 2, maybe second to last track. And it just has this really haunted, techie kind of vibe to it. I really like the label art here. How it's just kind of like this pinwheel, this circular. it feels like a circular record. If you listen to the way that the elements kind of like pop off, it has very distinct momentum to it. And you can pitch it up, you can pitch it down. It's very versatile, and overall, I'd say one of the strongest releases in his catalog. Probably the most dramatic track that I'm going to talk about today is Symphony for the Apocalypse. Now, this was a Sven Väth pick. Sven Väth is also a huge fan of Marionette. I think he's a Mathew Jonson fan in general. But this one here has like super drama to it. There used to be a clip of some kids out at a Sven Väth party somewhere overseas, and Sven was playing this and you could hear it going off in the background. The interesting thing about the track is it has a lot of reverb and space in it, but also the kick and the bass line are somewhat understated. So they sit low and it rolls, but it's not like a punch. It's more just like the kick just kind of hangs back and lets the synth do all the work. And the synth is super dramatic, super aggressive, and apocalyptic. And I guess that's why he called it this. I felt like this didn't really get as much love as it should have. I thought, based on how cool the synth was in this, that maybe this would compete with Marionette for, favor amongst DJs, but maybe it just has to do with the time period that it came out, as digital was starting to take over and vinyl was starting to fade. But this is very high quality Mathew Jonson record. I would say in my top 3 for him. I do want to say that there are also some other awesome Mathew Jonson records. The one behind me, When Love Feels Like Crying, and the one with Sebastian Muellert, if I'm saying that correctly. They're both excellent records. It was very tough to whittle this down to 5 tracks, but I just wanted to give you guys a starting point for today. Mathew, thank you so much for the music over the years. Thank you for keeping that label going. I know it's been tough for you, and if you can manage to eke out any more releases, I'm sure we would all love to hear them. Thank you, and take care, guys. Peace.